Hello. So, I am Avenel and I am autistic. I like to actually use the term I am an autist. I don't know why. I just like that term better because it sounds close to artist, and I'm also kind of that, but my art's not exactly art. It's a little weird, so it's kind of more like art, autistic art. So, anyway, um, and it is actually a word in the dictionary. I was excited about that. Anyway, I was not diagnosed as autistic until late in life. And I had so many challenges up to this point. And I don't know, I'm also have ADHD and some other fun stuff, but the fact that I'm late diagnosis made it really hard for me, and life is very difficult, and I'm in a place that I don't even know what I'm going to do. Right. But the thing that's unique about my situation, I think, is because I went for so long without knowing I was autistic, and I was in mental health services, but being a woman and using wrong terminology, because when you're young enough and people teach you words like anxiety without understanding exactly what I'm describing, and then I'm using the wrong words, it just makes things messy, right? And so, but I did a lot of study on my own. I did a ton of watching or listening to podcasts about communication. Like I had this total fixation on communication for a while because I realized, like, throughout all the mental health things and like trying to function normally in workplaces and that kind of stuff, like I realized communication is a big issue. And I would just really study things and come up with all these plans and all this stuff, right? And for a long time, like I did that. So at this point, now that I had kind of like the piece of the puzzle, like no pun intended, because that's like the autism thing, that makes me understand a lot of this stuff, like not everything, but like makes my life make more sense. Like there's a lot of dots I've connected, and there's a lot of things that I now can verbalize that I think are very difficult for a lot of people to verbalize, right? Um, so, anyways, that's why I'm making this video kind of like, I don't know. This is my experience. Everybody's different. So, anyways, just sharing my perspective. So, labels. Labels are inevitable in life, and labeling as autistic can be very important dependent upon the circumstance and the person. For me, if I'd had that label earlier, I feel like I would have been able to be myself and learn, as I like the term I've heard somebody put, to do life autistically, to do things my weird way and have people back off and not correct me, right? Because that's how I need to do it. There's so much effort put into trying to make things look normal or do things the way other people do that's counterintuitive. It doesn't work for my brain, but because the way that I do things may seem unusual and stuff, like I've been taught, I've been overcoached to make things appear normal, so that I have this voice in my head whenever I'm doing stuff. Like I'm always like, it makes me overthink even more, which I'm an overthinker anyway. And so, anyways, but what I mean by labels are inevitable is, like, for years I was like, well, it doesn't really matter if I'm autistic or not. It doesn't matter because it's still the same thing. I still need to do all these same tools. I still need to da 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 da, right? Personally speaking, yes. But then I had like total meltdown stuff, right? Because I'd had meltdowns, like sensory meltdowns, when I was little, and probably when I was a teenager. But I went for quite a while with being able to control my world enough that I didn't get to that point, right? And but then as I got older, I had basically, I just was completely disillusioned. Like I got to a point where my health was struggling. Also, I spend my mental health stuff, and communication is full-time job, like full-time plus some, right? Like, and then my health started struggling, and I was dealing with complex workplace things, and I was doing things. And I have all these routines and things that I would do, check them off the list and make it make sense, right? And then I started realizing that I can do all the right things. I can communicate perfectly. I can put it in writing so that I know that I've said exactly what I've, and it doesn't actually change how people will receive it. People will choose to believe what they want to believe, and I can't control that. And by my nature, I'm kind of inconvenient for people, and I notice inconvenient truths, not like environmental one, but like, you know what I mean? Like there's things that are inconvenient, like I'll notice, like, well, you're saying all these things, these people are doing bad behaviors, but I will be able to notice, but really it's this procedure that's causing people to do this bad behavior, and this is what needs, people don't, the management does not want to hear about that. They want just everybody to overclock it and fix themselves, even though the system's broken, right? So anyways, I started to realize like all of this effort I'm putting in and all these things is not, I can't break that barrier of other people. Like you can do all the right things, but that doesn't mean people are going to respond the right way. And I started to realize that because of how I was, like being different, right? My real label is autistic. People, even though some people don't want to, most people will at least respect that. Sorry, getting over COVID, had a coughing fit coming up. Um, so most people respect like autism enough to go, maybe I don't understand what's going on here, right? Like, but until I have that label, people will put their own labels on me. So my label should say autistic, ADHD, whatever, oversensitive, like to stimuli, right? But what I get labeled as is like oversensitive, like, emotionally. Um, I get labeled as a bitch because I say things very directly. I get labeled as controlling because I'm trying to make sure that we're on the same page, and I'm like, well, this is my understanding. I get labeled as lazy because I am an overthinker and I can get so stuck in my thoughts because I can't figure out what the right thing to do is. I get overwhelmed and I can't function. I get labeled as stupid because I make really dumb mistakes sometimes. I am overthinking and I have so much stuff that's like makes sense and it's intelligent thoughts, but I will totally forget because I'm so focused on one side of things. Like I remember I was making something, I don't remember, it was a while ago. I was building it and I got so into the whole process of what I was making that I totally completely forgot to take gravity into account. And then when I made it, it was like, oh yeah, gravity. Like I'm not stupid. I just like sometimes I just get where I can't keep all the right things in the front of my mind at the right time, right? And so I get labeled as being um, negative. Oh my gosh, that's one that I have my whole life. Everybody's, oh, you're so negative. You're so negative. But it's like, I'm not negative. I'm explaining truths, right? Like, so people will be talking about how like, oh, well, let's go and do this thing. And I will say why I don't want to do that. And they go, well, you're being negative. And I'm going, no, now I know. No, I'm not being negative. I know going there, doing that is going to be hell for me. So no, I'm not going and I'm not being negative, and it's not on me that the norm doesn't get affected by the things that they do the same way that I do. That's okay. We just understand that I'm not going to go to those things. I'm not trying to say you don't have to go. I'm saying I don't want to go. And there's like just those things that like up until I understood, until I had that piece that kind of made things connect, the labels that people stuck on me, I also, because I am autistic, because I didn't know, and because I was constantly overthinking and all these things, I had a tendency, because I knew I was often the odd one out in a room, like my opinion was usually different, my perception was different. I started to think that maybe I was wrong all the time, like maybe everybody else is right and I'm wrong. So then, okay, maybe I'm just being negative. So I'll push through it and do it, and then I fall apart, and it was terrible, and I knew better. But I trusted them, and I trusted that their label, okay, I'm being negative. I need to be positive about this. Okay, I'm being lazy. I need to push through this. And like at workplaces and stuff, when things were really like so overwhelming and that it wasn't feasible, and I'm like people are coming to work and they're all being okay, right? Because they're not going through the emotional turmoil and the cognitive struggle that I'm going through, where we're trying, this is our job. Like you tell me my job is this and it is written down, that's what I'm doing. Even if it is an unrealistic, completely unmeetable goal, that's what I feel like I'm supposed to live up to. And so if I don't live up to it, I leave every day like beating myself up going, oh man, I failed, right? And but other people, like I think part of my breakdown in life was when I realized I thought other people lived life the way that I do. And then I realized they don't care. Like they're like, whatever, as long as we don't get caught, it doesn't matter. And that is just so completely out of my, like I don't know how to live life that way. I'm sure they're much happier people than I am, but I don't know how to do that, right? I care. And so for me, it was just like I would be getting labeled as things, and then thinking maybe they're right. Maybe I am negative. Maybe I am a bitch. Maybe I need to change myself again. Okay, I have to go home and do all this self work, and I need to. That's where I started listening to all these podcasts and all these things. Okay, how do I say things differently? How do I? And so I am just working on myself, which is the freaking hard work of life, is working on yourself. And so many people never have to do that because they fit in, they click. It's not a big deal. I didn't realize that until more recent years, but now that I do, the world is like making more sense. And I realize how many years of my life I spent beating myself up and studying and trying to change myself and trying to fix all these things for a world that was never going to listen to me anyway. Because it's not that I'm not saying it well, it's not that I'm not communicating well, it's that they don't want to hear what I'm communicating. And I started to realize that when I'm in those situations, well, part of what made it change is I got basically so overloaded that, and with the medical stuff that happening, because the medical system is the worst if you are autistic, it is very difficult to get help because the communication barrier with people who are like, okay, I don't have time for this kind of an appointment, and like, and so, and things just spiraled out of control, and I started getting like post-traumatic stress, and so then I started having more meltdowns. And I mean, what I mean by meltdowns is where it's like so completely overloaded and trying to communicate because I have this stuff that's super important in my head that needs to be in the other person's head, but I cannot get it there. And every time I try, they are telling me things like they're interpreting the situation incorrectly, and I can't do anything, and I'm trapped, and I need help, and I need to communicate, and I can't. And then I will get so completely overloaded that it turns into what probably on the outside when I was little was interpreted as, temper tantrums. Like, but I will scream. And it basically in my head, it just feels like I almost completely black out to reality. And my body just goes into this overload mode. I usually scream, and I know I oftentimes afterwards will have like a black eye or a bloody nose. And so I guess I'm hitting myself, or I hit my head on the wall, or, and it's like, it's super embarrassing to have these things happen, but they start happening more because of the post traumatic stress where I'm already like up here and I've already just been burned so many times. And so then, and the next time I go out, right, let's say I have a meltdown in a situation and it's humiliating and it's terrible. And I feel like, am I just this like crazy person? Am I just a child? Am I just, like, why is it that this is happening? So I go out again and I'm afraid because I don't know how to stop it once it starts. And it just like, it gets to a point, like if I can tell it's building up and I have control of, like, I need to leave this room, I need to not be in this conversation, I can recognize when it's triggering, but like I can't, once it reaches a certain point, I don't know how to stop it. And people have construed it as being violent, threatened to call security on me, when I am in a place where, when I'm at that place, I have been trying my absolute hardest to function, and I am doing everything I know how to do, and I can't. And it's just like, it's like this ultimate total like claustrophobia almost, but also like my brain is just, the thoughts start to swirl faster because I keep feeling like I've got to fix this, I've got to change this, I don't know how to, what do I do? And it's like, do this, and I just can't. And it's like, often, usually I'm hitting my head too, is like, and I think it has to do with just that feeling of that, the thoughts just like, anyway. But it makes it so that when I'm out places, I'm afraid of getting pushed to that extreme. And for me, when I've been in those places, after I've gotten to when people threatened to call security on me, and I was like, it's just so discouraging because you already feel ashamed and embarrassed and overloaded and all of this stuff. And then to have that, and then I started realizing they don't understand that I'm autistic. They don't understand what's going on. And so I started recognizing, before it escalates to that point, if I tell people I'm autistic and I'm struggling with what you're saying right now, and so give me a second, they change, they stop, and they recognize, oh, she's not being a bitch. Oh, she's not just being lazy. Oh, she's not stupid. Oh, well, some of them still think I'm stupid, but whatever. Those people can think what they want. Doesn't bother me. Anyway, But they will change. But then the people who think I'm stupid or think all those things anyway, they're like, oh, autistic, you know, whatever. They still know they'll get in trouble if they, like they, especially in the medical place where this stuff happens a lot for me, is they still know like, okay, like I have to do the right things to not, which is like, I don't care if you like me or not. I still need, I need to not be pushed over the edge. I need people to take a beat. And um, for most of my life and everything, it's always been people pushing it back on me. Well, you need to do this. You need to do this. You need to do this. Yeah, granted, I do a whole freaking bunch, and a whole lot of people will never know that. They won't understand all of the work that goes on in that. But at some point, I need people to reach back, and I need people to take their damn labels back and understand that this is the label, autistic, not your label. I'm not stupid. I'm not lazy. I'm not this. I have a different brain. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with my brain. I think the world is becoming increasingly narrow in who is allowed and who is to be. And, it's like as long as you can match our ideal here. And it used to be that like years ago, because in my lifetime, like if I hadn't had delays in my life, I probably would have found something early on and been in a career and been okay, and not necessarily needed to have the label, right? Because I think that I have enough intelligence to be able to overclock. My life would have been harder for sure, but like I think it would have been possible. But then nowadays, with the way that things have changed with social media, with just like I can't even explain it in words. It just makes sense in my head. But it's like the way that our hiring processes, all of these things are so much different now. There's so much lies involved. Like we have to be dishonest with the people, and I can't do that very well. And like the standard of like, we're going to keep the system broken and you guys all have to overwork around it because we don't know how to work the system. And, if I tell my boss they're not going to like me and I want to promote to be that boss. And so, like it's just like all this weird stuff in between that keeps the system from being where jobs are actually doable. And so you have to be able to be the type of person who goes in and is like, yeah, whatever, I'll just fake it. Doesn't matter as long as we don't get caught. And it's for the most part, it's about right. Doesn't really matter if I don't do it exact. You have to be able to be that kind of person and not internalize things and not really care. Like, cause people will get, like customers get angry. You have to be able to just be able to like, whatever, and move on. And those people can succeed in life. Right. And we have made it so that's kind of almost the only type of people who can easily succeed. People who have any more, like who need things a little more structured, who need, to be able to be open and honest about things. And we don't want them, right? Because we want it to look really good. We don't really care how it is under the surface. We don't care if it is really good. We just want to make sure that everybody knows how to make it look that way. And that is like the antithesis to who I am. Like I am so about being genuine, because if we're not real about our struggle, if we're not real about the problems, then things just fester, and it's difficult because in workplaces they'll do all these trainings and things. Because I was at a workplace where it was great, like they were talking about all the stuff but not doing any of it, and it was like, so I would like Brene Brown and like all of those kind of things that are really about these being a like having a healthy functional workplace. And so you're hearing all this stuff and it's like yes, 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 and then people are still doing it the broken way. And so anyways, I know I am rambling. I always call my brain a ping pong ball. Sometimes it turns into a pinball and just gets going even more because all these things are so connected. But it really comes down to, for me, I needed this sticker for myself to be able to say, okay, I'm doing my part. I do all of the mental health stuff. I try to learn to communicate. I try to put all this effort into this stuff. You got to do your part. I'm telling you I'm different and I need you to take a beat. And I need you to recognize that maybe you don't understand what's going on with me. You can't judge me by you, just like I can't judge you by me. You don't have the same triggers. You don't understand. Vice versa. Same thing. We are wired differently. And so you can look at me and see my behavior and go, oh, that behavior is laziness. To you, it might appear that way, but that doesn't mean that's what it is. That behavior is being a bitch. That doesn't mean that's what it is. You might not understand what I'm trying, how hard it is for me to communicate without saying things directly or that kind of thing. And so all that to say, I just think that sometimes, like, 'cause sometimes people go like, why is everybody autistic all of a sudden? Like, and it's like, well, no, it's people are needing that they need the world to reach back a little bit. It used to be that the world was a little bit easier for people of different types of um, neurodiverse. It used to be that there was places that we could function in. We could go and take that job, and there's some jobs we're really good at, but you know what? We don't get hired there because the interview process is sort of ridiculous. And so that kind of thing. Like there's just so many things that there's all these new roadblocks, and people are struggling because it's like it's only like it's made for neurotypical people only. And it's just like I need that sticker to be able to say I'm autistic, to get people to know that they have a job too. I mean, real talk, it doesn't matter if I have a sticker or not. We all have that job to be able to go, maybe I don't understand what's going on with this person, and we have this difficulty, like people with anxiety disorders, people will think, oh, well, anxiety disorder, okay, got it, blah, 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 blah. Not recognizing that might mean I need to change the way that I'm talking or dealing with this person. That might mean they have ADHD. Okay, yeah, blah, blah, blah. No, that might mean I need to change the way that I am expecting, I'm communicating, I need to change me. Just like so many of us who have those disorders and those problems, mental health issues, like we do so much work of like, okay, like how do I do this? Okay, how do I communicate this? How do I think about this? How do I change my behavior? How do I, and then you go to people who are like neurotypical and they don't do any of that. And it's like, it needs to be both sides doing their work so that we can actually both communicate well and we can learn to work together well. And so, anyway, I'm getting to the pinball brain point, so I think I will stop.